Good morning. Maybe it's not morning for you. It is morning for me. Although a little later in the morning than I normally record these outdoor things, so my shade is evaporating. Anyway, good comments on yesterday's video. I'm going to respond to a few of them. There are more good comments than there are comments that I'm going to respond to in this video, although I think I'm going to do 2 videos today. I'm going to shoot 2 videos today. We'll see if I actually post them both. So, yesterday I was responding to a very polite inquiry from somebody who was looking at a video of mine from 2019, in which it was called Doomer Brain Rot, or Smells Like Doomer Brain Rot. You know, an abrasive title, I grant you. I didn't actually rewatch the video. Hopefully I wasn't as abrasive in the video as I was in the title. But, you know, I basically relayed my history with doomerism. How I was a techno-utopian, and then I got converted to doomerism at a time in my life when I was susceptible to it, and spent more than a decade in that mindset before coming out again. Now, coming out again, I have not reverted to techno-utopianism. I see both, and I'm going to talk about this in response to some comments. I see both the doomer fixation and the singularitarian or techno-utopian fixation as being maybe not equally unhelpful, but they're both unhelpful. Although I think that the doomer fixation is definitely more destructive to one's psyche and life outcomes. Okay, first, the author of the original comment that I was responding to in yesterday's video, Sota is his user handle. He writes, and in yesterday's video I said I don't know how old you are or how long you've been into this, but you know, the older you get and the more you observe the people around you and their behavior, but also, you know, your own mental fixations and, you know, personal fads, the more you'll come to see larger patterns, or words to that effect. And Sota writes, I'm 25. And since I was a child, I've been fascinated by technological development, especially the exponential growth of computing power. So, kind of sounds like Sota and I were on similar paths, although I think he got started a bit earlier than I did. I was certainly into science fiction at age 15, but I don't think that exponential returns in computing power really crossed my radar until the early 90s, when I was in my 20s. Sota continues, at 15, I was introduced to the modern collapse theory by Piero San Giorgio, a Swiss guy on YouTube. The gist of it was, first, our society is very fragile because it entirely relies on oil and other raw materials. Second, shortages are incoming, leading to extreme chaos very soon after making survival the #1 priority of most of the population. There would be blood in the streets and potentially billions of deaths around the world. I believed it because it seemed to be backed by real-world data, but it also made me feel more lucid than the average people, which was enjoyable. So I'm going to pause there and say, yes, this is the allure of the esoteric, the allure of, you know, the pattern, the idea that a pattern which is available for anybody to pick out, but only a few do, and you're one of them, yeah, makes you feel special, makes you feel pretty good, pretty smart. I'm very familiar with that sensation. However, I'm absolutely not adapted to a low-tech environment myself. I thought that at least I could prepare for it, which I did not. It's very hard to do. It is very hard to do because you live in a technological society where not only do you have access to, you know, all the abundance that technology provides, but you are expected to take advantage of it. There are requirements placed upon you, you know, that assume that you will make use of the technology available to you. I didn't obsess over this doomer perception, but it was still somewhere in the back of my mind. So when my classmates asked me what I wanted to do in the future, I said homeless, which was a half joke. You know, as long as you're not addicted to heroin or something along those lines, yeah, you can carve out a decent homeless existence for yourself, particularly if you're not homeless in that, you know, you're sitting in a cardboard box on the sidewalk, but, you know, if you have a membership at a gym, like a nationwide gym, like, what's it called? Planet Fitness and you have wheels, be it a motorcycle or, pickup truck or whatever, and you drive around, you can shower, maybe you've got a converted, what were those, Honda Elements. Those were great vehicles. You've converted one of those to put a bed in the back and you can sleep in that. As long as you shower every couple of days, it's not going to stink of body odor, and also launder your sheets. So, if you're on a laptop sitting in a cafe someplace, you look like pretty much everybody else in there. You're not the homeless guy sitting on cardboard with, a cup in front of him. That's a beggar, or an addict or somebody who is just broken as a human being. But not having a fixed address doesn't mean that you're broken as a human being. So, there's a possibility there. Supposedly van life is over, and I never experienced it, but that's okay. I move often enough as it is, and whenever you move, you tend to get rid of stuff. So I'm traveling pretty light already, but not that light, and not tiny house light either. I mean, I'm living in 2 rooms in my mother's house right now, but I also have a bunch of boxes on her front porch and, a chair in her living room, a big, cool rocking chair. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. A few years ago, I became optimistic about the future again, for reasons that I don't remember, and it felt like a euphoric relief, but it was short-lived. Soon after, I got reminded that the raw material shortages, including lithium used to create EVs, were quasi-inevitable. At first, it was maybe 50% wishful thinking, 50% really believing it, but at that point, it was more 10% wishful thinking and 90% thinking it's true, because in between, I realized how unwilling I am to prepare for collapse. Again, preparing for collapse as an individual is hard because human beings survive in groups. That's our survival strategy. That's our niche. We cooperate. We cooperate abstractly, according to programs, algorithms, customs, rules. We have this ability to, to strategize, to forecast, to compare forecasts, to pit forecasts against one another. We have, our brains are evolved. Our major mental capacity is evolved for keeping track of status and, competing with one another for status, or just recognizing, who's got status and who's worth following. We don't do much of anything as individuals. So trying to prepare for collapse when your civilization and your society is not interested in that project is a very uphill battle, and most people will fail at it. So if you're one of most people, who gets lured into this alternative mindset and it doesn't work out, it's not a problem. It's really not. Recently, I had to change my PC, so I got passionate about hardware once again. It led me to discover how astonishingly advanced AI has become, and to the subreddit r/Singularity. Oh, sorry to hear it. It totally blew my mind. I obsessed over the idea of singularity for several weeks until I watched a video of 2 businessmen doomers. There are actually communities of capitalistic doomers who aren't nihilistic and want to become rich as possible to become more resilient to the collapse. They say they use their fear to motivate them to become more powerful, which might be true. I don't know. I try to do the same. So when I was at the ASPO conference in Washington, D.C. in 2011, I went to Chris Martinson's section, his breakout session. And the people who attended that session were very, very different from the people who attended all the other sessions that I was in. These were guys, they weren't in suits and ties. They were dressed down for this event, but these were clearly investment guys who were interested in making money. And Chris Martinson started his presentation by saying, look, before you invest, you need to have these bases covered. You need to be out of debt. You need to be in a secure location or a sensible location out of the city. You need to be invested in your local community. You need to start gardening. And once you've got all that, in place, then you can start thinking about investing with an eye toward, the turbulation that's coming, or the tribulation that's coming. The turbulence and tribulation. And I could see that the guys at my table, as Chris Martin is saying this stuff, they're like, yeah, come on, get to it. What about the investment? What about the money? Tell me about the money. So yes, there are definitely people who are interested in collapse because they think they can get rich off of it. And what, rule the trash heap? I don't know. I don't quite get that mentality, but clearly I don't, because here I am sitting by this rustic barn in Arkansas, talking into a smartphone to about 100 people, 130 maybe. So Sota continues. I was watching a video of, okay, before we go on, actually, let me comment on this Swiss guy that he mentions. This is the guy that got him into doomerism, Piero San Giorgio. Now, he's been at this for a while, long enough that I should know who he is, but I hadn't before reading this comment. He mostly, most of his stuff is French language stuff. He published a book in French, which mostly sold in France and Belgium and Quebec and parts of Switzerland where people speak French. So he wasn't known to me, but I found a video of him basically breaking down his message in English, and it's super familiar. Super familiar. In fact, he even references Chris Martenson, in this short video talking about what he's about. So, yeah, it's resource scarcity, particularly petroleum, particularly metal ores, rare earth metals, and then the perennial boomer fear: too many mouths to feed, too many human beings. Famine is coming. Look at history. Look at history. Famine is caused by war and by mismanagement by government. Famine is not caused by the earth, by photosynthesis not working anymore, there are droughts, there are weather and climate events that impact harvests, but the big famines where people starve and you see those famous images of children with, rail thin legs and arms but big bellies that are filled with, swollen, that's always war. That's war that does that. What's causing all the turmoil now? What's causing all this hand-wringing about shortfalls of agricultural inputs, particularly potash, which comes from Ukraine? It's war. So this whole Malthusian notion that populations grow faster than food supplies is just stupid. It is just stupid. A human population will not outgrow its food supply. It can't. It cannot. People require food to live. They require food to grow to the age where they can reproduce. If there isn't enough food to feed those people, they will not grow beyond the limits of their food supply. So, yeah, I mean, you can do on the back of a napkin, look, one mother has 8 children, multiply by 4 generations, look at this enormous exponential increase. Well, if there isn't the food to feed those kids, that back of the napkin, calculation will not play out. It doesn't work that way. When I was in high school in the 80s, in the 1980s, I took a debate class, and every year, there's a national debate organization, and the debate organization picks the topic for that year. And the subject matter for the year that I was doing it, I think it was 1985, was topsoil, the health of the topsoil. Or no, it was something about water quality. But the place where I honed in on that topic to build a case was about topsoil erosion and the loss, the degradation of topsoil to salt from, putting salt on the roads. And I spun a catastrophic scenario out of accurate figures about topsoil loss and accurate figures, pretty accurate figures as far as I know, about how much salt is put on roads and gets washed off, into agricultural lands each year. And from those figures, I spun a catastrophic scenario. 1985. Okay. I'm not going to move the camera, but, here I am in agricultural land. The sun still shines. Photosynthesis still works. Cows still eat the grass and turn it into milk and beef. And, chickens still eat the bugs in the grass and turn it into eggs and chicken meat. All these processes still work. Yes, you can take data, accurate, scientific data, put it on a graph, and assume some, basic continuity of past performance and say, look, catastrophe in the works. It typically doesn't play out that way. Anyway, I'm already going on much longer than I had intended to. Continuing. Sota continues. I was watching a video by Kartik Gada, the one who suggested a $5,000 per year UBI increasing by 20% each year. I don't know this person, or at least I'm not aware of being aware of this person. So continuing. Trying to time the singularity. I asked him about raw material shortages, and he basically told me that my question showed that I don't understand technology. Okay, so yeah, you're going to run into arrogance in every camp that you go to around these topics. There will be people who are arrogantly dismissive of anybody who is not speaking their language. It's just going to happen. I tried to understand his point of view, so I typed technological deflation on YouTube and found one of your videos. Okay, that's how you found me. Gotcha. I'm in a state of confusion now. I believe that we're very likely to see the singularity this century if growth of certain technologies like computing power keep up their exponential pace, but I try to understand why some people who seem very knowledgeable about economy think that catastrophic shortages are unlikely to happen. So I'll come back to comment on that. I'm just going to push through to the end here, though. He continues, I said 2040 because even in 2012, Piero said the collapse was almost certain to happen between 2020 and 2050. Well, you know, if you're forecasting in 2012 and you're preaching to the doomosphere, that's a very safe date range. Particularly if it's on the latter end, you will probably never have to answer for those failed predictions. I'm also tired of the doomer mentality. I want to understand what's going on, but maybe it's better for me to assume the worst is coming because fear of death can be very motivating. No. Thanks for your insightful reply. I really appreciate it. I'll watch your videos on your description. So the videos that I posted are links to videos where I'm not debunking exactly, but pointing out some flaws in the peak oil mentality. I actually don't suggest that you watch them. If you haven't already, don't worry about it. Here's what I recommend. The singularity. Put the singularity out of your mind. It is not a helpful concept. It is the mirror image of, fast collapse. Read John Michael Greer. read his his ongoing blog, Ecosophia. But if you want to go back and pick up some of his books, the one to start with I would think is the first one of his that I read. It's Apocalypse Not. Where he describes the problem of peak oil. He describes the unsustainability of industrial civilization, and then he says, look at history. These things don't play out like events, big events in human lifetimes. Wars do. Wars absolutely do. But things like the collapse of a civilization, we have an exact year for the collapse of Rome, but the only reason we have an exact year is because, however you pronounce his name, Odoacer, basically the guy that the Eastern Roman Empire considered to be a barbarian, when he took the throne and sent, young Augustulus off to play at a manor somewhere, the Eastern Roman Empire didn't recognize him. But, Roman tax collectors were still collecting taxes in what was the Roman Empire. They still called themselves the Roman Empire. The network of Roman roads still existed. Everything from the year before Odoacer took command and everything, the year after, it looked pretty much the same. It was just the guy on top that was different. And Roman emperors were anything but stable. I mean, they went through a lot of Roman emperors, sometimes more than one a year. That wasn't the norm, but, in really turbulent periods, they would go through a lot of emperors. But, for people who lived through that transition, the collapse of the Roman Empire that happened in a particular year, it was just life. It was just life going on. And, John Michael Greer says, eventually the last person is going to walk out of Manhattan. Manhattan will have become unlivable, but they're not going to think there's anything weird about it because the process of, the depopulation of Manhattan was so slow, compared to the scale of a human lifetime that it was just business as usual. It was just normal life. If you want to worry about something, worry about war because war fucks things up quickly and on a major scale, particularly when there's nuclear weapons involved. So the singularity. The singularity is the mirror image of the fast collapse in that, here, let's graph, the growth of computing power. Let's look at Moore's law over time. Let's look at clips of Boston Dynamics robots, from year to year and how more how much more nimble the Atlas robot is getting, or how the dog-like robots can dance in this synchronous way or open doors collaboratively. Yeah, it's all very impressive to look at. But Asimo, the Honda humanoid robot, he was doing his thing back in what, like 2002, 2003. This stuff is not moving nearly as quickly as these types of videos and these types of arguments make it appear. And like a lot of the really impressive and quick moving AI stuff that's happening now is really the playing out of discoveries that took place, or first written about and published about in 2012. So this stuff does not play out as quickly as the techno-utopians like to say it does. And a lot of technologies which look promising don't develop as quickly as people. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I am not a Musk hater by any stretch. I think that the Musk haters are borderline psychotic, really, most of them. But look at his pronouncements for when things are going to happen. Like, how long has he been saying, oh yeah, the self-driving taxis next year, it'll be here next year. Are we going to have a human crewed mission to Mars, a SpaceX mission to Mars by 2030? Fuck no. No way is that going to happen. Will it happen eventually? Yeah, it'll happen eventually, but not on Musk's timetable, not the one that he's talking about right now. These things take longer to play out than the techno-utopians said they will, just like the processes that are pointing in the other direction take longer to play out. And here's the takeaway message from this whole video. And sorry to the people whose feedback I was going to read and didn't. I mentioned in a video a couple days ago a quote from Eliezer Yudkowsky. Now, actually, this is on a podcast, so if you just watch the videos, you haven't heard it. But Eliezer Yudkowsky said, pseudo-famously, beware of things that are fun to talk about. Beware of things that are fun to argue. Why? I talk to a lot of people who are, environmentally aware. They are critical of, capitalism and aspects of our society. And they are kollapsniks. And they are, they say they hope the collapse doesn't come. But yeah, they do. They really want it to come. And I try to talk to them about artificial intelligence. And they're not interested. They're not interested. They don't want to hear about it. It's not their cup of tea. And if you're not interested in a topic, you are not going to investigate it deeply enough to really have much of an understanding of how it's going to play out, going into the future. Well, the same is true on the techno-utopian side. You try to talk to them about resource constraints. You try to talk to them about political instability. You try to talk to them about issues of scale and, bigger isn't always better. And they're just not interested. They're not interested. So they're not going to look into it deeply enough to really have a very impressive, understanding of the counter argument to their position. I just so happen to have started off in the techno-utopian camp, and because of my life circumstances and because of the time in the economy, like I really got into podcasting in 2006, and I was established in podcasting and had an audience and had a regular production schedule going into 2007 and 2008 when the economy went to shit. And I had been talking to people about why the economy was going to go to shit. And, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, I was like, fuck. It's all happening. It's going down now. Well, you know what? Here we are more than a decade later, and it's stabilized. There are homeostatic forces at play in the environment and in the technosphere and in the economy, which kollapsniks just don't want to hear about. They don't want to think about. Don't want to talk about. They want to look at the pieces of data that support the thing they like to talk about coming about. They're not interested in, in an investigation of the homeostatic forces that are going to prevent the collapse. They're just not interested. They don't want to talk about it. So it's just the quirks of my own personal trajectory which have led me to spend a significant amount of time in both of those camps and to have come out the other side seeing the flaws of both and not being a partisan for either. And also, just my personality is such that I'm not a partisan. Right now, the United States is bitterly divided between what I call the red tribe and the blue tribe, the Republicans and Democrats, but even people who, are dissatisfied because neither party really goes far enough in the direction that they want to go in. But, we're very polarized, and I don't identify with either tribe. I can get along with either. It's a little bit easier for me to get along with the blue tribe, and I enjoy the company of people, who are college educated, who are more likely to be in the blue tribe. But I do not share their prejudices, and I don't have any patience whatsoever for the vicious contempt that they direct at, the people who live in places like where I am now. I have no patience for that shit. My general point is, just echoing Yudkowsky, beware of things that are fun to talk about, and just understand that there are topics that are not of interest to you because they just don't mesh with your personality and your interests, and that will always be a blind spot for you, which means, given that there are certain things you're just not going to look at because they're not of interest, given the limited, compute power that you have in your head, given the limited time that you have to devote to research, there are always going to be large areas of relevant information and relevant processes and forces that are just not on your radar, that you're just not taking into account. The upshot of that is the future is unknowable. It is unpredictable. And we don't much, we are prey to psychological predilections which drive us to extremes. We're not much interested in the conservative forecast. We want the extreme optimistic forecast, or we want the extreme pessimistic forecast, whichever matches our personality and current mood and circumstances the best. But in all likelihood, neither of those is going to play out. The developments going into the future, and it's 2022. I'm 54 years old. I've been looking to the future for more than a half a century, and this isn't what I envisioned at any period. At the height of doomerism, I did not expect to have to stop talking into my smartphone to let the cars go by. And at the height of my techno-optimism, where are the frickin' robots? Why are those cows out there not genetically engineered to require no veterinary care, to require, to be able to eat, thorns and all manner of stuff that cows just aren't interested in eating? Why do we even have cows? Why don't we have vat-grown meat? Why isn't that super cheap? It just doesn't play out as quickly as your imagination wants it to. So that's a general message. The future is unknowable. It doesn't matter how confident somebody's prediction is. It doesn't matter how scientific or how scrupulous their accounting seems to be. They don't know the future. They don't know the future. They, most likely, if they make their living predicting something, they've found an audience who wants a particular prediction, and they provide that prediction. That's their job. They get paid to do it. Their bills are due every month, so they keep doing it. That's their job. My message to you, Sota, is forget about the singularity. Forget about where technology is going. Pay attention to what's happening in artificial intelligence right now. Things are moving very quickly right now. Don't forget about AGI. It may never happen. If it does happen tomorrow, you'll hear about it. And just, following along with what's happening in AI right now will lead you into, AGI and the implications of that. But, I studied the philosophy of science and the philosophy of mind in grad school back in the 90s. And at the time, I was fixated on artificial intelligence, but artificial general intelligence. Human-level artificial intelligence with subjective experience and a sense of self and desires for itself and its future. And that's not the AI that we got. But the AI that we got is radically transforming our world. And when I say our world, I don't mean the planet and I don't mean the biosphere. It is radically transforming the world, which is to say the social world, which is connected via this technology. It is improving very rapidly. And, over the course of months, like this year has been a really exciting year in artificial intelligence as applied to image generation. Things are moving very quickly. Just keeping up with what's happening in the moment should be very exciting to somebody with your interests. I would recommend This is, I'm not a professional YouTuber. I don't generate income from this, so I can say this sort of thing. My channel may not be the channel for you. I highly recommend that you watch a channel by a guy named Yannic Kilcher. He is actually working with AI, something I don't do. I just talk to people who work with AI. And he's much more versed in this stuff than I am. And the things that he's doing are really exciting. And, he's a fun, colorful character to listen to. So I will post a link in the show notes or the show description. It's not a show, it's a video. I'm a podcaster. In the video description below, I'll post a link to Yannic Kilcher's channel. Check him out. I think you will really enjoy what he's doing. And he's not talking about the future. He's talking about what's happening right now. And what's happening right now is dynamic, it's interesting, and it's moving very, very quickly. So check it out. All right, I'm done. Talk to you later.